If you were at a camp in Afghanistan and you were running that comp the way that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi seem to be running their operations, I think the people under you would be very concerned.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. I honestly believe that it is just a matter of time before the next major attempt by a terrorist organization to attack America. That's not alarmism. It's based on real-world indicators, on conversations with people who monitor these threats, and on my own intuition as a former Navy intel pilot who served during the War on Terror. America faces constant threats, and as Jake Tapper implies, we are not ready, because the Trump administration has put fools in charge. We are blowing fishing boats out of the water in the Caribbean, maybe with drugs on board, maybe not, but we're calling them terrorists, while our Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is chasing election conspiracy theories. America's best hope of thwarting those who would harm us is relying on the professionalism of those doing the actual work. The agents, the analysts, the intel pilots, to keep their heads down and focus on protecting the country. But in some cases, even they are being targeted by Trump's purges. In this second half of my interview with Jake Tapper, we talk about the threats America faces and how badly unprepared this administration is to meet them. We also get into the complete failure of Congress to provide oversight so that the administration focuses on actual threats to the American people. And Jake and I have a bit of a disagreement about the role of the media in all this. Here's part 2 of our conversation. I imagine you're still in touch with folks doing the real work of government in those offices at the DOJ. Their level of frustration must be stratospheric, having to answer to someone like the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District, who has no business being in that role, knowing that if they step out of line even an inch, if they express a political perspective online that is even perceived as critical of Trump, they're going to lose their jobs, and their work is going to be jeopardized, their work of defending Americans.
A lot of them are just keeping their heads down and trying to do their jobs and hoping that they don't get noticed for what they're, doing or not doing. And to be clear, most people functioning in the military, in the Justice Department, in the FBI are good people working hard, without political biases, just trying to do the work of protecting the American people. But yeah, it's difficult. Of course it is. And you look at the intelligence community, look, you're a former intelligence officer, like, what is the focus of Tulsi Gabbard at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence? Is she focused on credible threats to the United States and trying to make sure that we're on top of saving American lives? Or is she focused on trying to prove some case that the Russia investigation had absolutely no basis in reality, which is not true? And look, I am the first to say, like, there were obvious faults and problems with Operation Crossfire Hurricane and all that. But there also was clearly an effort by the Russian government to interfere in the U.S. election. I mean, I don't know anybody credible who disputes that, but she seems more focused on that, on disproving the basis of that investigation instead of, that was 9 years ago, 10 years ago. There is stuff to do right now in terms of keeping us safe. And as I don't need to tell service members or intelligence officers, again, one of the things that comes across in this book is just the unrelenting threats to America. And there isn't a lot of time to take your eye off the ball. If you were at a camp at a COP in Afghanistan, and you were running that COP the way that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi seem to be running their operations, I think the people under you would be very concerned.
That's the understatement of the millennium. Are people in your orbit, is your profession coming around to the realization that these are not normal times? That
you don't think that the media has been covering that adequately, that it's not normal times? It seems like there's a lot of... Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
No, I don't. I think there is an occupational hazard of being a journalist who covers crises after crises and thinking that this too shall pass.
I don't know if it's this too shall pass as much as it is every day there's a lot more news, and also the philosophy of if everything's a crisis, then nothing's a crisis. I mean, we cover. I'm looking at the CNN Chiron right now. It says inflation rises after Trump says it's been defeated. And it is our anchor, Omar Jimenez, interviewing our fact checker, Daniel Dale. So that's Trump saying something that isn't true about inflation. I mean, we're doing the job of it. I don't know that we need to be lighting our hair on fire about this particular lie. We just need to be presenting the facts.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, after January 6th, it's we know what a huge crisis looks like. And we should really, that we have to have some perspective about some of these things.
I guess, but and I gotta hate this term, but forgive me, the Overton window has shifted so much that
I love that term. I don't have a problem with Overton window. First of all, most people don't know what it means. Second of all, it is the handiest tool in the world for explaining anything. Like the rise of anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, at least publicly expressed, that's an Overton window shifting. I mean, you can see it happening in real time. People say things that they never would have said 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
So anyway, our understanding of what makes a crisis has shifted so much that, and I think it's by design, Trump has a genius for what's Bannon's phrase. We'll make this PG for a second. You throw enough shit at the wall, you flood the zone with shit, and you lose the ability to focus on a crisis for long enough for it to have permanence or traction. I'm thinking about the demolition of the East Wing, which if it had been done under any other administration, we'd be talking about it today. We'd be talking about it for the next 10 years. There would be investigation. Somebody would probably go to jail, but it doesn't meet the threshold anymore. And I'm wondering if that's part of this strategy of the constant crises of governing.
I can't speak to whether it's a strategy or whether it's just President Trump enacting his agenda. I mean, look, all I can do is cover the news every day and try to focus on what we think the big stories of the day are. And sometimes we get it right and sometimes we get it wrong. I mean, there's a lot to cover. You're right. I mean, I don't know if it's strategy or if it's just during his 4 years out of office, he and his folks, put together a binder in which they laid out their plans of what they want to do. Forced, the immigration raids, the ICE raids, and the tariffs, and disrupting foreign policy, not all of which has been bad. I mean, we see, the ceasefire has held in Gaza and Israel, and Vance and Trump not long ago, told Israel that annexing the West Bank is not on the table. I mean, not all of it's bad, but it is a lot, for sure.
Hey everyone, it's Ken. Quick break here to say thanks for watching and a huge shout out to everyone who supported my most recent reporting trip to Ukraine. I hope you followed the updates on Substack. I reported from Chernobyl, from Kyiv and Odessa, and from frontline positions alongside some of the bravest people I have ever met. If you haven't yet signed up for my Substack, please check it out. It's free to join. The link's below. Thanks. One of my biggest frustrations with the American media in particular is the conceit of impartiality. And I find the European approach really a lot more refreshing in its honesty about not being impartial. You have right-wing reporters and left-wing reporters, and they wouldn't dream of having a tagline like all the news that's fit to print or democracy dies in darkness. And they just dispense with this notion, this conceit that you can be impartial about the news.
The print newspapers do. I mean, I don't know that. I mean, do you think that the BBC considers itself liberal?
No, the BBC is an exception, right? The BBC.
But you're absolutely right about the print newspapers. The Telegraph is this,
yeah,
and the Guardian is that, 100%. And that's, by the way, the tradition of newspapers in this country. I mean, one of my journalistic heroes is a guy named Benjamin Franklin Bache, who was the publisher of a newspaper in Philadelphia in the 1700s and early 1800s called the Aurora Advertiser, and he was anti-federalist. And he did some of the greatest reporting that had been done about George Washington, about John Adams. So yeah, I mean, 100%, there is a tradition of it. I don't know that I agree with you that it would be better. Like, I mean, we have that. MSNBC is that, and Fox is that, and CNN tries to not be either of that. And I mean, I think that I think that that's positive. But I mean, I guess you disagree.
The problem is the pretense, the declaration that it's otherwise. Fox saying it is fair and balanced.
Well, they're not, obviously. Obviously, they're not.
I think that breeds a level of distrust when if they just assume the European model of we're on this side and we're on this side.
You know, I interviewed Trump a few days ago, or maybe it was a week ago, and one of the things he said to me was, I mean, it wasn't an interview. I've been trying to get another interview with him since 2016, and that was the last interview I did with him, but it was a phone interview. And he said he thought CBS News was going to be fairer now with the Ellisons in charge. He said, I don't expect them to, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something, I don't expect them to be like Fox, but I think they'll be fair. So, I mean, like he gets it. I mean, I don't think anybody, I mean, some of the cabinet secretaries in the Trump administration, as far as I can tell, have only been interviewed by Fox. Well, I don't know that Pam Bondi or Pete Hegseth have gone on any other channel.
If you look at the rotation on Fox News, it has become state media. And it would just, I don't know, it would be good to hear them admit that. Hear somebody admit that Fox News is a propaganda arm of the U.S. government. That's not going to happen. That's a pipe dream. But I think that the pretense that it's anything other than that certainly doesn't.
But I don't think we were that. I don't think we're that for Trump. And I don't think we were that for Biden. I mean, so I don't think there's a pretense to give up.
I guess institutionally, I agree with you. As an individual, as a journalist, is there a line that the administration could cross, at which point you'd say, okay, I'm an American first. I'm no longer impartial. This administration.
But I mean, if it's, yes, absolutely. I try to do that. I mean, it's, where that line is different for every single person. It's different for everybody. But for me, when they were violating the First Amendment, the spirit of the First Amendment, by trying to get Jimmy Kimmel kicked off the air because they didn't like his speech, and the FCC commissioner was telling local affiliates to drop him or to complain, I said that very clearly. And there have been other times. I mean, when it comes to lies, when it comes to like basic decency, and when it comes to, our freedoms, I am perfectly willing to call it out. I just don't think it's my job to say, to be in opposition to every single thing coming out of a White House because it's coming out of this White House. I mean, I'm capable of covering something as fairly as I can and hearing the arguments. And I think that there's value in that. Now, look, maybe in 2025, 2026, moving forward, maybe there isn't. Maybe people just want to hear from reporters that they feel like they know their political views and count on that. I don't particularly care for it, for me personally. And when there have been shows or channels or newspapers that have started to veer into a way where I wasn't sure I was getting the whole story, I stopped listening or reading. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a role for people who are at least trying to call balls and strikes, as long as we have some standards on some issues that transcend political views, like freedoms, like democracy. Democracy is a great example. There's no other side of what happened on January 6th, right? I mean, we all saw what happened. The president told his supporters to go to Capitol Hill and fight like hell because the democracy was on the line. And they tried to stop the counting of the electoral votes, and it was violent and people died. I mean, that just is what it is.
Well, the other side, of course, is what the entire Republican caucus in Congress is saying. And I want to focus on that for the last,
but most of them.
Almost all of them. And you've covered Congress as well. We're looking at a total breakdown of the Article 1 intent, right, of a separate branch of government that holds the executive in check.
They've completely relinquished power. It didn't start with Trump, but it's gotten worse with Trump. It started with, very relevant to your show, it started with the power to declare war, which is a congressional power. And in fact, Congress insisted on being part of what George W. Bush did in both Afghanistan and Iraq. And since then has been completely silent, to the point that President Trump is now using those war powers to attack terrorists abroad, to go after, you're right, to go after what he calls narco terrorists with this intelligence that we don't know what it is. And I think that is an example of Congress just because they don't like voting for war or against war, because that makes them vulnerable one way or the other. It makes them have to take a position. And voting against the Iraq war was very unpopular in its time. But Bush did ask Congress. Remember the way that, this is kind of crafty actually, but the way that Obama got out of honoring his commitment to the innocent people of Syria when he said that if
he asked for a vote,
if he used chemical weapons, that would be crossing a red line. The way Obama got out of it was by saying he was going to let Congress vote on it.
Yeah,
because he knew. I mean, I don't know this. I speculate that he knew that's the last thing Congress wanted to do. They didn't want to be weak, and they didn't want to be warmongers. Those are the two choices, and so it never happened. There was never a vote, and now we have Congress handing over the power to impose tariffs,
right.
Which is supposed to be a congressional power.
Yeah, it's a total abdication. It's a good point to end on, because tomorrow we've got Jason Crow, who just gave this landmark address at Center for American Progress about the need for Congress to reassert and to reclaim those powers that were enshrined in the Constitution and have been surrendered. Jake, thanks so much for joining us. The book again is Race Against Terror. Let's chat again soon.
I'd love to. And just to your viewers, because we didn't talk a ton about the book, I think they will find in it a good, compelling story, a real story, a true story about the only effort to prosecute an al-Qaeda terrorist who had killed Americans on the battlefield. There's a lot of stuff about the troops. And I tried to write it like a thriller, like a page-turning thriller, even though it's nonfiction. So I hope they check it out. And thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
That's the best part of it. It reads like your fiction, which I suspect you use some of those tricks in the writing.
I did, yes. I learned a couple things.
You did. All right. Thanks, Jake. Great having you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.